"We can't handle her anymore," Patricia Morton told the social worker, signing the disruption papers that would send me back into the foster care system after 4 years of calling her mom. "She's too difficult, too angry, too much for us to manage. We thought adoption would be different, but she's just not the daughter we wanted." Her husband Gerald nodded beside her, already mentally redecorating my bedroom into the home office he'd always wanted, while I sat frozen in the social services waiting room clutching a garbage bag containing everything I owned. But why did I stay silent through the process that would define my adolescence, and why, 20 years later, did Patricia Morton's senior housing application land on my desk with her signature at the bottom? Mrs. Morton. I looked up from the paperwork as she sat across from me in the property management office. Older now, but unmistakably the woman who'd returned me like a defective appliance. "Do you remember me?" She squinted, confused. "Should I? Have we met before? You adopted me when I was 12. You returned me when I was 16. I watched recognition dawn slowly, horror replacing confusion. "I'm Vivian, the difficult one, and I own this building." The Mortons had seemed like a miracle when I was 12. I'd been in foster care since age 7, shuffled between homes that ranged from neglectful to merely indifferent. The Mortons were different, or so I'd believed. They had a nice house in the suburbs, stable jobs, and a desire for the daughter they'd been unable to have biologically. "We chose you," Patricia had told me during those early months. "Out of all the children, we wanted you." I'd believed her. I'd let myself hope. I'd started calling them Mom and Dad, decorating my room, imagining a future where I belonged somewhere permanently. The problem started when I turned 14. Adolescence is difficult for everyone. For adopted children with trauma histories, it's a minefield. I struggled with depression, with anxiety, with the normal teenage rebellion amplified by years of instability. I needed therapy, patience, and unconditional support. The Mortons had expected gratitude and compliance. "We saved you from the system," Gerald would remind me whenever I expressed any negative emotion. "You should be thankful, not difficult. Other children would kill to have what you have," Patricia would add. "Why can't you just be happy?" They didn't understand that happiness isn't a choice you make to repay a debt. That trauma doesn't disappear because your address changes. That the anger I carried wasn't about them. It was about everything that had happened before them, everything I was still processing. By the time I was 16, they'd stopped trying to understand. They'd decided I was the problem, not their expectations. The disruption hearing had taken 30 minutes. 30 minutes to undo 4 years of belonging. 30 minutes to transform me from daughter to ward of the state. 30 minutes for the Mortons to explain why I wasn't worth keeping. She refuses to follow rules. She's withdrawn and uncommunicative. She's made no effort to bond with us. We've tried everything, but she's simply too damaged. Too damaged. The phrase had echoed in my head for years afterward. The social worker had looked at me with exhausted sympathy. "Vivian, do you have anything to say?" I'd had everything to say. I'd wanted to scream that I'd followed their rules obsessively, terrified of being sent away. That I'd been withdrawn because they'd punished me for showing emotion. That I'd tried desperately to bond with people who'd made clear I was a project, not a person. But what was the point? They'd already decided. Nothing I said would change anything. "No," I'd whispered. "Nothing to say." Aging out of foster care is its own special trauma. At 18, the state's obligation ended. I had no family, no resources, no safety net. I spent my first night as an adult sleeping in my car, everything I owned in the back seat. The statistics for foster youth aging out are devastating. High rates of homelessness, incarceration, poverty, early death. The system that was supposed to protect us often just delays our destruction. I refused to become a statistic. I worked 3 jobs through community college, then 2 jobs through state university. I graduated with a business degree and student debt that felt insurmountable. I took an entry-level position at a property management company, working my way up through determination that bordered on obsession. By 30, I was managing properties. By 35, I was purchasing them. By 40, I owned a portfolio of residential buildings including Sunset Gardens Senior Living, a complex that prioritized dignity, community, and fair treatment for elderly residents. I'd built everything the Mortons had told me I was too damaged to achieve. Their application had arrived through normal channels. Gerald had passed away 3 years earlier, leaving Patricia with a fixed income and a house she could no longer afford to maintain. She needed senior housing. Sunset Gardens had the best reputation in the region. My property manager had flagged the application because our screening process was thorough. He hadn't known why seeing Patricia Morton would matter to me. I'd taken the file home that night, staring at her handwriting for hours. The same signature that had appeared on my adoption papers. The same signature that had appeared on my disruption papers. Now it appeared on an application asking me to provide her housing. The meeting in my office had been my choice. I could have delegated, could have approved or denied without ever seeing her face. But something in me needed this moment, needed her to know who I'd become despite what she'd done. Vivian. Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. You look successful. I am successful, despite being too damaged for you to keep. We were overwhelmed. We didn't know how to help you. You didn't try to learn. You expected a grateful little girl who would be easy and compliant. When I turned out to be a traumatized teenager who needed actual parenting, you returned me like merchandise. We thought the system could help you better than we could. The system put me in 3 more homes in 2 years. One of them was abusive. I aged out with nothing. No family, no support, no one who cared if I lived or died. I kept my voice steady. I slept in my car, Patricia, while you redecorated my bedroom into Gerald's office. Her excuses came in waves. We were young and inexperienced. The agency didn't prepare us. Gerald had health issues. We did what we thought was best. Each excuse erased more of my sympathy. They hadn't been young. They'd been in their 40s. The agency had offered resources they'd declined. Gerald's health issues hadn't prevented them from taking lavish vacations. What they'd thought was best was getting rid of an inconvenient child. Do you know what you taught me? I asked finally. Vivian, you taught me that belonging is conditional. That love is transactional. That I was only valuable if I was easy to manage. I spent years in therapy unlearning those lessons. I straightened the application on my desk. You also taught me to survive without depending on anyone. So I suppose I should thank you for that. I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. I know it doesn't help, but I'm sorry. We should have tried harder. We should have gotten help. We should have. Yes, you should have. But you didn't. The application sat between us. Patricia's eyes kept drifting to it. The paperwork that would determine whether she had housing or continued struggling in a house she couldn't maintain. Are you going to reject it? She asked quietly. That's what you're expecting, isn't it? That I'd use this power to punish you. To return you the way you returned me. I wouldn't blame you if you did. No, you probably wouldn't. I leaned back. But that's not who I am. I built Sunset Gardens to provide dignity to seniors who need it. I don't exclude people based on personal history, even people who hurt me. Relief flickered across her face. But I'm not going to pretend we have a relationship. I'm not going to have dinners with you or call you family. You'll be a tenant. I'll be your landlord. We'll interact professionally, if at all. I understand. Do you? Because I need you to understand something else. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this because rejecting you would mean letting the past control my present. I've worked too hard to build this life to let what you did still have that power. The processing took 2 weeks. Standard background check, credit review, income verification. Patricia qualified for subsidized senior housing based on her financial situation. Her application was approved through normal procedures. She moved into Unit 247 on a Tuesday in October. I wasn't present. I had a property manager for that. Living in the same building as the woman who'd returned me required boundaries I'd never anticipated. I owned 12 properties across the city, but Sunset Gardens was my flagship, the one I visited most often, the one that represented everything I'd built. Avoiding it entirely would have meant surrendering space I'd earned. So I didn't avoid it. I maintained my regular schedule, my regular presence, my regular role as the owner who cared about her tenants. Patricia saw me occasionally, in the lobby, in the community room, walking the grounds with my property manager. Each time, she'd start to approach. Each time, I'd acknowledge her with a professional nod and continue with my business. I wasn't cruel. I just wasn't available. 6 months after she moved in, Patricia requested a meeting. My assistant scheduled it like any tenant meeting. 15 minutes, standard conference room, professional agenda. What can I help you with, Mrs. Morton? She looked older than she had at move-in. Smaller somehow. The confidence that had carried her through my disruption hearing was gone. I don't need anything. She hesitated. I wanted to tell you something. About why we did what we did. I'm not sure I need to hear explanations. Please. Not for forgiveness. Just for understanding. Or maybe just so I can finally say it out loud. I waited. Her story wasn't what I'd expected. Gerald was diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's the year before we returned you. We didn't tell anyone. He was too proud, too afraid of losing his job. I was terrified of what was coming. And you were struggling, needing things we didn't know how to give even when we weren't drowning ourselves. That doesn't excuse what you did. No, it doesn't. She wiped her eyes. We should have told the agency. Asked for help. Done anything except what we did. But Gerald wanted to pretend everything was fine, and I went along with it, and you became the casualty of our denial. I was 16. I needed parents. You needed better parents than we were capable of being. That's not your fault. It was ours. We should never have adopted in the first place. We wanted a child to complete our picture of a perfect life. We weren't prepared for a real child with real needs. Understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. I understood now, in a way I hadn't at 16. I understood that the Mortons had been broken in their own ways, overwhelmed by circumstances they'd hidden from everyone, including themselves. But understanding didn't erase the damage. Didn't undo the years of instability, the trauma of being returned, the message that I was too much trouble to keep. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. It helps to know there was context I wasn't aware of. Does it change anything? It changes my understanding. It doesn't change what happened or how it affected me. I stood, signaling the meeting's end. I hope you find peace with your choices, Patricia. I've found peace with my life despite them. That's the best either of us can probably hope for. Patricia lived at Sunset Gardens for 4 years. She participated in community events, made friends among other residents, and by all accounts was a model tenant. She never asked for special treatment, never presumed on our history, never pushed for more connection than I was willing to give. Occasionally, I'd see her watching me during my property visits, not approaching, just watching. I'd wonder what she was thinking, whether she saw the 12-year-old she'd adopted, the 16-year-old she'd returned, or the successful woman who'd built something despite everything. Maybe all three. She passed away in her sleep, peacefully, at 78. Her will left her few possessions to charity, except for one item designated specifically for me. A box of photographs she'd kept from my 4 years with them. Birthday parties, holidays, ordinary moments I'd forgotten existed. A note accompanied the box. I kept these because giving them to social services felt like erasing you completely. You deserve to exist in someone's memory, even someone who failed you. I'm sorry I wasn't the mother you needed. I'm proud of who you became. Patricia. I added one photograph to my office wall. It shows me at 13, laughing at something off camera, looking hopeful in a way I'd forgotten I'd ever been. Behind me, the Morton suburban house, the place I'd briefly believed was home. Visitors sometimes ask about it. Family, I tell them. Complicated family. It's not the whole truth. But it's not entirely a lie either. The Mortons shaped me, not through love, but through loss. Not through support, but through survival. I built everything they said I couldn't. Became everything they couldn't imagine. And in the end, I was the one who provided her a home. They returned me at 16 for being too difficult. They signed the papers that sent me back to a system that almost destroyed me. 20 years later, they needed housing, and my signature determined whether they got it. I could have refused. Could have returned rejection for rejection, abandonment for abandonment. Instead, I approved the application, not for them,